Hi, I'm Beth from Sew Country, and today's tutorial is for a pattern that I have not sewn before. I purchased this pattern as soon as it released and just never got around to sewing it. I am sewing up the Teresita train case from Rosa Patterns. I love train cases. I have several patterns for train cases, and so I'm really excited to try this one out. The unique thing about this one is that she did design it so that you can carry it as a purse. It has options to add connectors and even credit card slots inside it. But I don't want it for a purse. I want it specifically for a train case. I love train cases. I think they are great to have sitting around to keep clutter to a minimum while still having their counter spaces looking beautiful. I also think they're great gifts. I have craft shows coming up, so I'm kind of figuring out what patterns I want to make for my upcoming holiday craft shows, and I'm hoping this can be a pattern that I really like, that I can make a bunch of these. For your pattern pieces, you actually only have 2 pattern pieces for this project, and that is going to be for the top and the bottom. You have the main pattern piece, and then you have a smaller one for the stabilizer. That's the only 2 pattern pieces you have. Everything else is a cut and measure. So for the top and the bottom, I have 2 exteriors, 2 linings cut out. I have all the same print. How I stabilized these was I first used a layer of the kind of SF101 equivalent from Castine Handcrafted, and then for the main stabilizer I added a layer of Decaville Heavy on both the exterior top and the exterior bottom. I did not add the Decaville Heavy on the 2 lining pieces. The next piece we have is going to be the handle. For the handle, you cut and measure, and I just added a layer of Castine Handcrafted SF101 equivalent. That is what I have on the back of all of these pieces, just for that main stabilizing interfacing piece. For the body pieces, you will have a top which will go above your zipper. This piece will actually connect to your top part of the bag. I did add a layer of foam to it. The pattern gives you the option for quilting. I'm not quilting, but I do have the foam on this piece, as well as this bottom main piece, as well as this back piece. So I have 3 pieces of foam attached to these pieces. Each of these exterior pieces also has the lining piece that's cut out the same, but for the lining pieces, I just added the SF101 equivalent on all of them. No foam or nothing else as far as stabilizer or interfacing goes onto those. For the main body piece, I wanted to use a panel. My panel is from Jen's Fabrics. I thought this would be a really cute way to use a panel. Sometimes I struggle with how to use panels, and this fit perfectly, and so I love the way it looked. I have 1 piece of zipper tape. I have 2 zipper pulls. That's all I'm adding. If you wanted to take this up to the next level, you could add purse feet on the bottom, or if you wanted to carry this as a bag, you would follow the pattern instructions to add connectors and the credit card slots. Train cases are super simple to make. It's basically, if you would think about it, taking this piece and making a gusseted bag around it, except the gusset will be around this way. They're a lot of fun. They come together really quick. I'm excited to put this one together to see if I like the shape and how everything fits. We will be binding this pattern. If you're not a fan of binding, I suggest you try it, because you're just going to have a small area to bind on the top and the bottom. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and attach the zipper to these pieces, and so we're going to push everything else out of the way. I'm not going to add my zipper pulls just yet. I'm going to set them aside and add them later. I'll start by adding the zipper to the lining piece. So let's set that exterior up. This is that main body panel. Here is my lining. I'm going to have it right sides up. I'm just going to lay my zipper tape on top right sides up, matching all along this top edge. I like to do this basting step first because I just feel like it's a little bit easier and I don't have to use clips or tape or anything like that. But you definitely could just tape or clip and sew the lining and the exterior at the same time. Now that I have the zipper attached to the lining, I'm going to pull out that exterior piece. Mine has the foam attached, and I'm going to take it and I'm going to place it right sides down. So it is right sides together with both the lining and the zipper tape. If you want to clip or use double-sided tape, you can. Make sure you match up the short edges And along the top, we're going to be sewing all along the top of these two pieces. This time we're using the full seam allowance, which for me will be sewing right up against the zipper teeth as close as I can get. So now I have that zipper attached to the lining and the exterior. I chose to keep my foam in the seam allowance. You could definitely choose to keep it out if you wanted. You would just have to take the extra time to cut the foam a different size than the exterior to keep it out of the seam allowance. I just didn't care to that much. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate these two pieces, pull up by the zipper, and I'm going to place the zipper at the top and rolling that seam down. So I'm just using my fingers to kind of compress it and to get it to roll down. If you wanted to add some clips here, you could, but I'm just going to put my foot down about 1/8 of an inch away, and while I'm sewing, I'm going to be pulling that lining and just kind of using my fingers to kind of keep everything nice and smooth, just to save a little time. So I'll start sewing back stitch, and the entire time I'm sewing, I'll be pulling and compressing. So now I have this piece top stitched. Once we have this top stitching done, now we're going to repeat those same steps to add the top portion. The main thing we want to do though is to be careful that we have it matching up on the sides so that everything is symmetrical. I'm going to take that lining piece and I'm going to place it right sides up. I'm going to take the unsewn edge of the zipper, match it up there at the top and along the sides. Let's just put a clip in there so we can mark where it is. We do not want to get this out of alignment with this side piece, or we will end up short on the other side. Again, I'm choosing to just base this in place because that is what is easiest for me. So now I have the lining attached to the top. Let's grab out that exterior. If yours is directional, make for sure you have it orientated the way you want it to go. Mine is not, so I'm just going to flip it and place it right sides together. Again, making sure I match up that side so that it is aligned with the side. This time I'm going to sew with the full seam allowance. Like I mentioned before, I'll get as close as I can with my foot to the zipper teeth. Now that I have those pieces sewn, once again, I'm going to separate them from the zipper and place them wrong sides together. So now that I have that clipped along the top, I'm still going to use a lot of pressure to hold all of this flat while I'm top stitching to make sure I get a really good top stitch and to also make sure I don't lose my lining here where that foam is providing a little bit of extra distance from them to meeting up at the top. Now that I have this part done, I'm going to go ahead and add my 2 zipper pulls. You don't have to add 2, you can just add 1 if you would like. You can also baste all the way around this just 1/8 of an inch to make this all one piece. Just make sure if you do that you're pulling to make for sure your lining's not creeping up. I added my zipper pulls and I basted all around this piece. Now it's time to add that back gusset piece. I have 2 pieces, an exterior and the lining. The exterior has foam, the lining does not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my exterior, I'm going to place it right sides down. So I'm going to match up the top and the sides, add a few clips in place here, and then I'm going to go ahead and clip on the lining. Where this is a small section to sew, I feel comfortable having the lining and the exterior just clipped together instead of basting and sewing them all at once. I'm making sure everything is lined up correctly here at the top, and then I'm just going to sew with that full seam allowance given in the pattern through all 3 of these layers. After you get those pieces sewn together, what you're going to do is you're going to pull them so that they are wrong sides together. I'm just going to top stitch down that seam just 1/8 of an inch away. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this exterior piece and I'm going to go ahead and pull it so that it is right sides together with the other unsewn side of this zipper gusset piece. I'm just going to add my clips. If you're having overhang, make sure at least your top is flush with the top of the zipper gusset piece. Any overhang can be shifted to the bottom if you have it. On this one, I am going to baste this into place just because it's going to be a little trickier to get that lining to the place where it needs to be, and this will just ensure that you don't have any shifting while you're sewing the lining in place. So now I have the exterior basted. You can see I have a loop started, but we've got to get this lining piece, this raw edge, to be sewn right sides together with this. You can roll this up burrito style if you want, which means you just do a really tight roll here to be able to clip these pieces together. I'm going to start again with the top, matching up the top and this side. Go ahead and clip the rest of the way down. Again, if you have any overhang, make sure it's going to the bottom. That'll just ensure it's a little bit easier for you to clip everything off and trim it all up. Once again, we're going to sew with that full seam allowance. Now I'm going to go ahead and pop everything out, just pulling it through the top here. Now what I want to do is I want to top stitch on this seam, but I also want to baste everything around. Since I have foam, I typically find that I have a better result of doing this if I'm looking at the lining side and the exterior side is inside. Play around with it and see what you think, but this is the way I feel like works best for me, and so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start basting on this side. So here's where I've already top stitched. I'll start basting here, baste all down this side, then go ahead and top stitch down the other side, the finished edge, and then baste across the bottom. All of these stitches will be just 1/8 of an inch away. I'm pulling everything flat, making sure that everything is lining up really nice before I start sewing. When you're coming down the top stitching, since I'm doing mine inside of this loop, I'm just pulling this other side back so I can see. It's not really too hard. You just kind of have to keep it pulled out of the way. It shouldn't be too difficult for you. So now we have this completed tube. Go ahead and trim off any overhang you have and go ahead and mark the quarters on this piece. We're going to find the quarters by first matching up the two seams, adding a clip here and a clip here, and then we'll put those two clips together to find the quarter marks. Do that on the top and the bottom of this piece, and then we're going to go ahead and go on to the next step. It's time to make the handle and add it to the top of the bag. Since I'm using all woven materials and this pattern is written for vinyl or raw edge non-fraying materials, I'm going to have to be a little bit creative with making my handle. The first thing I did was I drew a line down the middle of this handle on the wrong side. After I drew the line down the middle, then I added double-sided tape on each side of that line. I typically don't use double-sided tape, but I felt like for this video it would be just a little bit easier to go through the steps this way. So I'm going to take off the double-sided tape, and then I'm going to fold each of these edges to that line that I drew. Here is the wrong side with the seam, the right side is smooth. So let's go ahead and fold it this way. Add a clip on each side, and then let's just sew down the short edges. I don't need to sew down all of it, just these short edges on each side so that I hide those raw edges. I'm just going to do 1/4 of an inch just so I don't lose too much of my handle. I'm just going to trim a little bit of that off. Kind of trimming in a curve shape, so I'm curving here and then curving back down just to get some of that extra bulk out of the way. And now I'm just going to pop this back out. And now I can refold this so that those edges are finished. Now that I have my strap finished, I'm going to go ahead and top stitch all the way around this strap so it's connected and all one piece. Make sure that all your edges are lining up. After you have your strap made, it's time to attach it to this exterior piece. Make sure you're using the piece that's going to be the exterior. So what I did was I first made my quarter marks on there. I'm going to need the quarter marks whenever I attach it to the rest of the bag, so I went ahead and made them first. Then you can use the pattern measurements, or you can even kind of eyeball where you want this handle to go. It's designed to have quite a bit of lift on it, so keep that in mind. I went ahead and used my hole puncher my handheld hole puncher just to punch holes in the handle and on this exterior piece. I'm going to add the rivet to go through my handle and then again through this top piece. And then I'm going to add the back of the rivet. It just snaps into place, but it's not secured yet. I'll have to take it out of the rivet press to secure it. I'm just going to go ahead and do that same thing on this other side and snap it down too. But you can see it tends to be able to be like kind of wiggly, and so what I'm going to do also, just do a row of stitching. Here's my rivet. I'm going to go in a little bit and do the row of stitching right there just to kind of secure this piece. Here is how my handle looks. I'll trim up my threads, and if you wanted, you could tack down the other edge too, but I feel like it doesn't need it. I'm going to go off camera to go ahead and set my rivets, and then we'll come back and add the lining, then attach these pieces to our bag. I went ahead and pressed the rivets in place, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this exterior piece and this lining piece, and I'm going to place them together. If your print is directional, make sure you have it in the direction you want them both to go. I'm going to match up all around these edges, then I'm just going to base these pieces together. So make sure they are wrong sides together, matching up all around, and then just base with 1/8 of an inch all the way around. Here is how the top looks. It's completed. You're going to attach the bottom exterior and lining the same way. You can add purse feet onto the bottom if you want, but of course you would not need to add a handle. So now that I have the quarter marks on my top and my bottom and on the bag body, it's time to put everything together. I went ahead and clipped the exterior bottom onto the bag. The first thing I did was I took the bag body and I turned it so that it was lining side out, the exterior is on the inside. That way I could clip this bottom piece right sides together. This is the part we will be bonding. What I like to do personally is I like to go ahead and sew around here with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, just the basting stitch to get this connected. When I add my bonding, that's when I'll sew with that full seam allowance to get everything connected. It's just harder for me to get that precise of a sew with the seam allowance whenever I have all the clips in the way, so I find if I do that first row of stitching just 1/8 of an inch, I have better results. So you can see I have the bag body on the bed of my machine. I'm just going to start slowly going around, removing the clips as I need to. If you find anything shifting or getting out of alignment, use your hemostat, use your stiletto. You can staple if you want to, or even use glue. You can see that as I come to this curve, I'm just rotating the entire side of this bag so that it is going upright. Go around and fill everything and peek in the bottom, see how it looks. I definitely lost the seam allowance a little here on this curve. I think it's okay. I'm just going to trim up. If you're nervous how it looks, go ahead and push this right sides out and check everything. I'm okay. I think it'll be all right, especially since this is the bottom. Now we need to bind this bottom part, and then we'll repeat all those steps on the top as well. There are many different methods of binding. I'm going to choose the method that is what I'm preferring to use that day. I'm going to cut out a piece of knit material, and then I'm going to sew it on as a single fold layer of binding, and then fold it again and sew it again. It is a few extra steps, but I feel like I just get the best results that way. So I'm going to go off camera, get my binding cut, and then I'll show you how I'm going to sew it on. So now it's time to attach the binding. I cut my binding 1.5 inches wide. You can use whatever binding material you like. This is just my preference. I'm going to sew it on by sewing a single fold and then folding it again. So I'm going to attach it right sides together with my bag. I'm just going to, since I'm using a knit fabric, it's pretty simple and easy. I don't have to worry about any raw edges because it won't fray. Technically, since this won't fray, I could even just wrap it around the edges and not worry at all about folding it, but I like this method best. I'm going to smash everything so I can get in here and get a really nice seam allowance, and then I'm going to sew with the seam allowance given the pattern, sewing all the way around here. I'll start sewing by back stitching. And then I'm sewing this by keeping that raw edge in line. So both the raw edge of the bag and the raw edge of the binding is in line. And I'm just going to go all the way around here, getting these pieces sewn together. I'm not putting any tension on my binding. I don't need to. The sewing machine foot will be pulling it and providing a little bit of tension for me. As I get to the curve, I'm just going to slowly start standing it back up again, just like I did the first time. You can see on this curve, I'm kind of flattening it out so it's a little bit flat, and I'm not pulling on my binding. It's just very loose, continuing to sew all the way around here. Since my material does not fray, I don't need to fold the edges down, but if you are using a woven material that does fray, at the beginning and the end, you would need to fold your edges down so that you wouldn't have any issues with fraying. Make sure you overlap and then just cut off any extra you might have. I'm going to start here at the straight edge, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my binding, I'm going to fold it and then wrap it around to the other side. The good thing about this type of binding is, so if you needed to kind of change the way your fold is, you have the option to make a bigger or smaller fold. Since I have foam in my seam allowance, I'm going to have to do a smaller fold here. If you did not have foam in your seam allowance, you would do a bigger fold than I'm doing because you wouldn't have as much bulk here. So you can see I'm just wrapping that folded edge over to meet where that previous row of stitching is. That way when I sew around here with the same seam allowance that I used to attach this, it's going to match perfectly, and it should catch on both sides then. I'm going to go ahead and clip all the way around this edge. Then I will sew again around this edge just like I did the first time. No changes, the same seam allowance going in the circle. I'm not going to show you these steps again and again because I've already shown you how I sewed around this bottom edge 2 times. I'm going to do it one more time, and then I'm going to repeat all those steps again for the top of this bag. When I come back, I will have the bottom and the top sewn on and this bag turned right sides out, and then we can just look at it and talk about our final thoughts for this pattern. My Teresita train case is completely done. The shape is great. I love the way it looks. The structure is wonderful. The issues I have with this is that leaving the foam in creates a bulky binding, and definitely along these seams we have some bulky spots. But keeping the foam out of the seam allowance means some extra cutting and a little bit extra time in creating these. So while I love this and I love the shape of it, I won't be able to batch sew as many as I hoped just because of the time involved. I definitely could do probably 5 to 10 for my next holiday show, but I don't think I will do more than that. When we open it up, we can see that we have it open wide, great shape, plenty of room for storage. Along your curves, you're always going to have a little bit of bulk there. Even though there's no foam in my top, I'm wondering if I keep the foam out of this bottom piece here at the base and the top edge, if that will help reduce some of this bulk here. Also, one other thing I noticed is that it's a little tricky to open and close it easily. I have to kind of hold down. So I even thought it might be good to have some little grab handles right here. Not for sure because that will change the look of it, but that is some of my thoughts on how this pattern comes together, how it looks, how it would be for batch sewing for craft shows. Gift giving, I think it would be great because you could definitely make several of these for gifts, but to get the money out of it if you're selling versus the time you put in, it might not be the best option. I'm going to keep thinking about it and decide for sure, but I do love this pattern. Definitely think it's adorable. I used a panel from Jen's Fabrics. I used a bag panel and it turned out great. It's a cotton canvas. I used some prints that I just had already in my stash for my top and my bottom and the lining. For the binding, I did use an athletic knit fabric for the binding just to give me the best look, but really, honestly, I don't feel like it's that much better of a look of binding over using just like a woven or a waterproof canvas, something like that. Overall, love the pattern. We'll definitely be making more. I think it's a great shape, and I hope you like it and enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any thoughts, questions, concerns, definitely let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching another video of mine, and I hope you have a wonderful day.